Hello, my name is Jason Miller, founder of Aspen Now Solutions. And today we are going to talk about certification exam preparation. So, this is a segment that's going to be a little bit different than my typical 100% tool approach, and mainly because I've received several inquiries asking me about ServiceNow exams, how to pass them, what the approach should be to taking them. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what my experience has been, and then also the steps that I take, or the approach that I take when I'm about to take one of these exams. So I just came up with this preparation checklist, and I'll talk about some of the different points here. So number one, you need to reach an understanding of the audience that the exam is taken, or excuse me, is supposed to take the exam. So if we're talking about, for example, the ServiceNow Certified System Administrator exam, then what you're going to want to know is who should be taking this, what are the prerequisites, what's the exam structure. So when I talk about exam structure, what are the different domains, if you will, that they're going to be touching on? So could it be user interface and navigation? Is it service automation? And what the percentages are of each of those types of questions? What are the question formats and what are the responses? So sometimes they'll have different types. They'll have true, false. They'll have multiple choice, and they'll have something that I believe is called multiple select, if I remember correctly, where basically you can choose multiple answers. How many questions are there on the exam? And then a lot of these exams don't have the pass rate or the percentage, I've noticed. So I think back in the day they used to, and they've gotten away from that basically because they want you to know everything. They don't want you to say, well, I passed with a 80% on my practice exam, so therefore I can pass this one because it's only a 75% threshold. Okay, and then here's one that people never think about is like who created this exam and why? Like why are you taking it? And then how do they want you to approach the exam? And I can tell you two words that I would think of when I look at this bullet point: best practice. What is the best practice? So that's what you really need to know. Research what other people have experienced online, LinkedIn, etc. I can tell you right now, I'm studying for the AWS Cloud Practitioner, so I intend to take that. And I reached out to someone based on something that they posted. So I went out to them on LinkedIn, connected with them, and I just had a nice little conversation about what they experienced and how they prepared for the exam. And don't be afraid to do it. LinkedIn, you can always contact me for information. And like I said, subscribers have contacted me, one in particular asking me for information. And I basically told them, this is what I experienced on the exam, but my information is fairly dated. So you kind of want to find someone that has taken it recently. Read, reread, and watch videos. That's what I would do. So if you're pressed for time, videos might be the better route if you can find them out there. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have insight on the different exams. So moving on. Create a mind map. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the mind map. So if you're a ServiceNow professional, just think of a table that you have all these columns and rows, and you have topics and information in the cells, and that's the kind of approach you want to take in creating the mind map. And also you want to think about this mind map and also draw it out by hand daily. Now I know this sounds like kind of a pain. I'll show you an example of one. Let me just get out of this screen. And here's one I created for AWS. And you can see here, I put the topics going this way, and then I put some words that are kind of related to them. And then just kind of went on down the list through the trainings and everything. So when you go through, let me get back to that point here, you want to hone in on keywords and the relationships between the keywords. So meaning that there's probably a keyword in the question and there's probably a keyword in the answer. So that's one thing that you want to think about when you're drawing these things out. Also, diagrams. Were there any particular diagrams in there that people found helpful that helps them with the test? And these can be acronyms also too. So if we're talking about ServiceNow, maybe we're talking about just the ITSM apps. I can tell you there'll probably be a question in there about incident problem change, and that all those extend the task table or something like that. That's one of the few questions that I remember from taking the exam. Post the mind map in a visible area. So I'm going to print that one that I just showed you, but I'm also going to draw it out on hand, and then, or by hand, excuse me, and then I'm going to post it in random parts of my place here. And you could put it anywhere you want. I jokingly said to someone, put it right where you look at whenever you're sitting down on the toilet. Put it right across from you, and if you have nothing better to do, just look at that thing. And eventually, you're going to memorize everything in that mind map. And you'll see where this goes in just a second. So practice the sample questions daily, no matter how easy they are for you. Just make sure you keep them in your mind. And also, we'll talk about how to approach it as you get closer to the exam. Okay, so so this is something that people also don't talk about, recall. First thing in the morning when you get up and right before you go to bed, you should try to recall all the information that you studied. And so everything that you wrote out on the mind map, just try to think about it without looking at it, and draw up those concepts and think about how that table was formulated, which columns were where, and what information went into the cells. Okay, so another item people never talk about: visit the testing center a week before the exam. Excuse me, I have a typo in here, but we won't worry about that. So basically, if you're going to go to a testing center that you've never been to, I can tell you from experience, I've been in a rush. I got there maybe a couple minutes before the exam was supposed to start, very nervous. Also, I didn't know that it was like 60 degrees in the room. For those of you who go in Celsius, that's probably about 14, 15 Celsius, and I was freezing the whole time. So in addition to being nervous, the absolute cold did not help me. So go to the exam center, ask them, what the temperature is inside. Sometimes I can tell you that I've done this before, and people were like, "So you actually came here a week before?" Yeah, because I want to know. I want it to be sort of automatic. In sports, they talk about muscle memory, and when you're going to that testing center the first time, you're not even going to know where parking is. You might not know what metro stop to get off on. You won't know how the elevator works in the building, if you have to take the stairs, all that type of stuff. So you should really become familiar with that environment. And like I said, it's just going to be like muscle memory. It'll just kick in when you finally have to go in for the exam and take it. Accelerate before the exam. I know some people will tell you they like to take a day off right before they're about to take the exam. I say no. You should think of this as kind of like in the stock market. When you see a strong chart, it'll start from lower left and go to upper right. You want to maintain that momentum. And in fact, if you're doing, let's say you do 30 practice questions a day for a 60 question exam, and then you ramp up to like 40, 50 a day, and then 60 on the last day, and then you take a day off, that's fine. But I would say do 120 if you could, if you had access to that. And I know it sounds crazy, but this comes from an exam I just took in January called the Series 65, which is one of the hardest financial regulatory exams, and it enables someone to become an investment advisor and invest other people's money. That was one of the hardest exams I ever took, and I can tell you a couple days before the exam, I probably took, it's a 140 question exam, and I took maybe, I don't know, I want to say 800 to 1,000 questions, 2 to 3 days before the exam, so I really ramped up into it. Create the safety net. Okay, so all that mind map stuff that you were doing, drawing it out every day, they're going to give you probably a couple pieces of whiteboard or some pages to write on, and either a pen or a Sharpie or a marker. And what you want to do is they're going to give you probably some sort of tutorial to watch for 15 minutes. And some of them are timed, some of them aren't. I'm not sure which exam you'll be taking, but I can tell you that what you want to do is you want to write everything out on those two pieces of paper that you can. And the reason why is because if you visualize, like if you've ever been to the circus and you're up on that tightrope, underneath you, you're going to have that safety net. That's exactly what you're doing. So if you visited a testing center a week before the exam, you get there and you're totally calm because you know the environment, and then you create that safety net underneath you, you're just totally ready to take the exam because if you need to reference something, it's already there. Okay, so here's another one. Separate what happens at your job or in the real world from what the exam answers are. So this is one that I find that people will fail exams because they say, well, this is the way we do it at work. Remember the two words, best practice. This is what they want you to say whenever you're answering an interview question. So it's the same thing for the exam. The exam answer will always be what the best practice is. And then here's one that I did, caffeine deprivation. So if you drink coffee, then try to stop about 2 weeks before the exam. I think I did that maybe 2.5, 3 weeks before my Series 65 exam, which was in January. And it was really hard to do at first. But I'll tell you one thing I did was right before I walked into the exam, probably about 20 minutes before, I drank one of those canned coffees, like from Starbucks or something. And then I was like really on because I hammered out that mind map and I just flew through the questions. And just to give you an idea, for the Series 65, the passing rate is about only half of the people will pass that exam. And I think it was 72% to pass. And mind you, I've never worked one day in a financial institution or a bank. And I did an 81%. And the highest score I've ever heard of was a 94 on that exam. So I think I did pretty well. So those are a couple of the things that I use to approach taking exams. I hope it helps you out. So I'm Jason Miller, founder of Aspen Now Solutions, and hopefully I helped you out today with your exam preparation. Thank you and have a great day.